There was a time when my life felt predictable, moving in a rhythm that, while not perfect, was at least familiar. My days were spent balancing work, responsibilities, and moments of quiet reflection. I had always been a person of faith, deeply rooted in the belief that there was something greater than what we could see or touch. But I had never expected my faith to be tested in the way it was on that fateful morning. My name is Daniel Carter. I am 46 years old, a former paramedic who dedicated years to saving lives in the fast-paced emergency rooms of Chicago. But my journey took an unexpected turn when an experience, one that defied all logic and human understanding, completely reshaped my life. It happened on a quiet September morning, the kind that felt almost too peaceful, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I was on the 7th day of a water-only fast, something I had been spiritually led to undertake. Fasting had always been a part of my faith journey, but this time it was different. There was a weight to it, a sense of urgency that I couldn't quite explain. That morning I left my apartment before dawn, heading to an early morning prayer gathering at my church. The streets of Chicago were still wrapped in the silence of the early hours, the distant hum of the city barely audible. A soft drizzle fell against the windshield as I drove, blurring the glow of the streetlights. My mind was consumed with prayer, with the presence of God feeling unusually close. Worship music played softly in the background, and for reasons I couldn't fully grasp, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Then everything changed. I was just a few blocks away from the church when a pair of headlights appeared in my peripheral vision. Too fast, too close. The next moment, an impact unlike anything I had ever felt shattered through my world. A truck, running a red light at full speed, slammed directly into the driver's side of my car. The sound of metal folding in on itself was deafening. My body was thrown violently against the seatbelt, and then, silence. A silence so vast, it swallowed everything. Later I would learn that my injuries were catastrophic. The crash had caused massive internal bleeding, multiple organ failure, and my heart had stopped beating for 17 minutes and 23 seconds. In the medical world, that amount of time without a heartbeat meant death. But what happened during those 17 minutes was more real than anything I had ever known in my 46 years of life. The moment the impact hit, it was as if I had been pulled out of time itself. 1 second I was in my mangled car, and the next I was outside of it, watching everything unfold from above. I saw the shattered glass, the twisted metal, the paramedics desperately working on my body. I could see everything with an impossible clarity, every detail sharp and precise. The flashing red and blue lights, the steam rising from the wreckage, even the man who had hit me. His hands gripping his hair, his face contorted in disbelief and horror. Then a force, gentle yet undeniable, began pulling me upward. I wasn't afraid. In fact, I felt lighter than I ever had, as if every weight I had ever carried had been lifted from me. The city lights faded. The sounds of the world dimmed. And then I was moving, ascending through what I can only describe as a tunnel of living light. It wasn't just light. It was alive. It pulsed, it breathed, it sang in ways beyond human comprehension. Every fiber of my being felt wrapped in warmth, in peace so profound it brought tears to my soul. I knew in that moment that I was leaving the world behind. And yet I wasn't afraid. I had stepped into something vast, something eternal. And that was when I heard his voice. A special message for you. Before we continue this journey together, I want to take a moment to invite you into something special. Here on this channel, we are more than just viewers. We are a community bound by faith, by curiosity, and by the incredible ways our lives intersect. I want to hear from you. Comment your name and city below, because in the next video I want to send you a personal message just for you. Imagine hearing your name spoken to thousands of people, feeling that special connection, knowing that in this vast world, you are seen, you are acknowledged, you are part of something bigger. And if you haven't already, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Together we are building something powerful, a place where stories of faith, transformation, and divine encounters are shared. Place where we uplift each other. Join us. Be part of this journey. Now let's continue. The voice wasn't a sound in the way we understand it. It wasn't carried by air or vibration, yet it resonated through me, through every fiber of my being. It wasn't just something I heard, it was something I felt, deep, overwhelming, unshakable. At first I couldn't make out the words. It was as if they existed beyond language, a message so pure that human words couldn't contain it. But then clarity came and I understood. Daniel, do not be afraid. The presence behind the voice was undeniable. It was him. I had spent my whole life believing in God, seeking him, serving him, yet I had never experienced anything like this. The moment I heard his voice, a flood of emotion crashed over me. Love, peace, awe. I was known. I was completely, utterly known. Every doubt, every fear, every moment of weakness I had ever carried within me. He saw it all. And yet, in that moment I felt no shame, no judgment. Only love. A love so deep it was almost unbearable. I wanted to stay in that feeling forever. But then, the light around me shifted, and I became aware of something new. I was no longer just moving, I was being guided. The tunnel of light had expanded. No longer a narrow passage but a vast space, almost infinite. Colors unlike anything on earth swirled around me, living, breathing hues that radiated warmth. And then, in the distance, I saw what I can only describe as the threshold. It wasn't a gate, at least not in the traditional sense. It was an opening, a veil between realms. On the other side, something indescribable awaited. And then, just before I could step through, something changed. I became aware of what I was leaving behind. I could see the world below. Not in the way we see things on Earth, but as if I had been given sight beyond sight. I saw the accident scene in excruciating detail, my body lying motionless as paramedics fought to revive me. The man who had hit me, his hands still clutching his hair in despair. The flashing red and blue lights of emergency vehicles reflecting off the wet pavement. And then, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. There were threads of light stretching from earth to heaven. Thousands of them. Some were strong, glowing brightly, while others flickered like dying embers. They weren't random, they were prayers. I could see the prayers of people across the world. Some were whispers, some were cries of desperation, others were silent but powerful. They ascended like golden strands, weaving together into something beautiful. And as I watched, I realized that some of those prayers were for me. I saw my mother miles away, kneeling in her living room, her hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. She didn't know what had happened yet, but she was praying for me, interceding. And in that moment, I understood something that I had never fully grasped before. Prayer is more powerful than we can ever comprehend. It was as if I had been given a glimpse into the spiritual realm, into the very mechanics of how faith moves through existence. But the most shocking part was yet to come. Because as I gazed upon the earth, I saw not just light, but shadows. There was another force at work, one that sought to snuff out those golden threads, to sever the connection between heaven and earth. I saw dark figures moving in the spaces between, whispering into the hearts of the lost, of the broken, of those who had long since stopped believing. They worked in silence, in subtlety, not with grand displays but with slow, corrosive lies. Your prayers don't matter. God doesn't hear you. You are alone. But it was a lie, because I could see the truth. Every single prayer, every single one, reached heaven. Even the weakest, most uncertain whispers made it through. No prayer was ever lost. And as this realization struck me, I felt something shift. The light around me intensified, and the presence of him grew even stronger. There is something I must show you. And just like that, the world around me changed. I was no longer standing at the threshold. I was being pulled deeper, drawn into something even greater, even more profound. Something that would change everything. The shift was instant. One moment I was hovering at the threshold, gazing upon the world below, and the next I was being pulled, guided, through a realm unlike anything I had ever imagined. Everything around me vibrated with life. It wasn't just a place. It was a presence, a force that resonated through me. The light was no longer just around me. It was in me, as if my very being had been infused with something divine. I felt weightless, free, yet more real than I had ever felt in my earthly body. I moved, not by walking, not by effort, but by intention. The very fabric of this place responded to my thoughts, my desires. I wanted to see, to understand, and the moment that longing formed within me, my vision expanded. And then I saw it. A vast, golden expanse stretched before me, shimmering like liquid light. It was not a city, not in the way we think of cities, but it was alive. Structures made of light stood tall, but they didn't feel built. They felt grown, as if they were part of the very essence of this place. And in the distance, something radiated an impossible beauty, a presence so powerful that even from afar I felt its pull. I knew, without being told, that I was in the outer courts of heaven. The air, or whatever filled this place, hummed with music, but it wasn't music as we know it. It was a living melody, a chorus that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Every note carried meaning, every sound spoke truth. And then, just as I was beginning to grasp the vastness of it all, I became aware that I was not alone. Figures of light moved all around me, each one unique, yet all carrying the same radiance. Some were familiar, faces I had seen in old photographs, loved ones who had long since left the earth. They knew me. Their eyes held recognition, warmth, love. Others were strangers, yet I felt an inexplicable connection to them, as if we were all threads in the same divine tapestry. One of them stepped forward, and the moment I saw him, my breath, though I wasn't sure I was even breathing, caught in my chest. It was my father. I had lost him when I was only 12, a heart attack stealing him away far too soon. Decades had passed since I had last seen his face, but here he was, whole, restored, radiant. He wasn't aged by time or burdened by the sickness that had taken him. He looked at me with eyes that sparkled with a joy so pure, so eternal, that I could barely contain the emotion swelling within me. "My son," he said, and the sound of his voice unraveled something deep inside me. I wanted to run to him, to hold him, to weep in his arms like I had when I was just a boy. But as I stepped forward, something greater held me back. There was more. This wasn't the end of my journey. Then I felt it again, that overwhelming presence that had been with me since the moment I left my body. It was closer now, stronger, filling every part of me. And then a voice, his voice, spoke once more. "Come. There is more to see." And just like that, the world around me shifted again. The golden expanse faded, and in its place, I saw something far greater, something that would shake the very foundation of my soul. The golden expanse melted away, and I was transported into something deeper, something beyond the boundaries of anything I had ever known. I was no longer simply witnessing. I was experiencing. The presence around me intensified, filling every fiber of my being. It was as if the very air, or whatever made up this realm, was charged with divine power. And then, as if the fabric of reality itself was unfolding before me, I saw between the seen and the unseen. In an instant, I understood what I had glimpsed before, the golden threads connecting heaven and earth. But now, I wasn't just observing them from afar. I was within them, moving through a vast and intricate web of divine connection. These golden strands were prayers, living, pulsating with energy. Some were strong, unshakable, burning like fire, while others flickered, fragile yet still reaching heaven. And then I saw something else. Beyond the golden strands, beyond the light, there was another presence. A darkness that lurked in the spaces in between. It wasn't overpowering, but it was working, whispering, pulling, trying to cut these connections. It became painfully clear. There was a war, an invisible battle taking place every single day. A battle not fought with weapons of men, but with prayer, faith, and fasting. And then the voice, his voice, spoke again. "You were never meant to fight alone." With those words, my vision expanded further, and I saw something that shook me to my core. I saw the effect of fasting. Wherever someone fasted with a pure heart, their prayers became stronger, brighter, undeniable. Fasting wasn't just about self-denial, it was about alignment. About tuning into heaven's frequency, clearing the static of the world, and allowing divine power to flow freely. I saw men and women across history, ordinary people who had embraced fasting as a weapon of faith. I saw how their sacrifice had torn through barriers, had shifted spiritual realities, had opened floodgates of power that changed nations. I saw how my own fast, just 7 days, had already been weaving something in the spiritual realm. And then I saw you. Yes, you, the one watching this right now. Because even as I stood in that place, I saw that this message was not just for me. It was for everyone who had ever wondered if their prayers mattered, if their struggles, their sacrifices, their faith meant anything. And now I can tell you with absolute certainty, they do. A special invitation for you. This journey we're taking together isn't just about my experience. It's about all of us. About our community. I want to know your name. I want to know where you're watching from. Because in the next video, I want to personally send a special greeting to you. Imagine hearing your name spoken in front of thousands. Being part of this moment, this movement. Comment below with your name and city. Don't miss this chance to be a part of something bigger. And if you haven't already, leave a like on this video. It might seem like a small action, but in reality, it's what helps us grow, what helps this message reach more people who need to hear it. So let's build this together. Let's connect. Because we are not just viewers, we are a family in faith. Now let's continue this journey. The weight of what I had just witnessed pressed into me, not as a burden, but as a responsibility. I was no longer simply an observer of divine truth. I was a messenger, entrusted with something greater than myself. The golden threads, the prayers, the battle between light and darkness. None of it was abstract anymore. It was real. And now I had to return. I felt it before I saw it, the pull back to earth. It was a gentle but undeniable force, like an invisible hand guiding me away from the heavenly expanse. For a moment I resisted. How could I possibly leave? How could I go back after witnessing such beauty, such truth? Then he spoke once more. You have seen what you were meant to see. Now you must tell them. With those words, a new clarity settled over me. This wasn't just a revelation for myself. It was a call to bring this knowledge to others, to share what had been shown, to wake those who were still blind to the battle unfolding around them. And then, like a falling star, I descended. The heavenly light faded, the golden expanse disappeared, and suddenly, I was back. My eyes shot open. The harsh, sterile light of a hospital room replaced the divine glow of heaven. The sound of beeping machines and muffled voices filled the air. At first, my body felt foreign, heavy, almost unnatural compared to the freedom I had felt just moments before. And then I heard the gasps. Doctors, nurses, people in white coats stared at me, their faces frozen in shock. Machines blared alarms, and I could feel the stiffness of medical wires and tubes running across my skin. I shouldn't have been alive. I knew it. The moment my heart had stopped, the moment my body had been declared lifeless, should have been the end. But it wasn't, because God had brought me back for a purpose. I saw a nurse drop a clipboard, her hands covering her mouth in disbelief. I heard a doctor whisper, "This isn't possible." But I knew better. It was more than possible. It was divine. And with every beat of my heart I felt it. The mission had begun. The days that followed my return were unlike anything I had ever experienced. Physically, my body struggled to catch up with the miracle that had occurred. But spiritually, I had never been more awake. Doctors came in and out of my hospital room, baffled. They spoke in hushed tones, shaking their heads at my charts. 17 minutes with no heartbeat, yet no brain damage, no organ failure. How? I knew the answer. Medical science could not explain it because this was not science. This was God. And yet, even in the face of such a miracle, I could feel it, the doubt creeping into the minds of those around me. Some doctors avoided looking me in the eye, as if afraid that acknowledging me would shatter their understanding of reality. Others dismissed it as some bizarre, unexplained medical anomaly. But then there were those whose eyes held something different. Hunger, longing, hope. One night, as the hospital quieted down, A nurse came to check my vitals. She was young, her uniform crisp, but her eyes betrayed exhaustion, not just physical but spiritual. She hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I heard what happened to you," she whispered, glancing at the doorway as if someone might hear. "They say you saw something." He nodded. She swallowed, struggling to find the right words. Finally, she whispered, "Is it real?" And there it was, the question buried inside so many hearts. The question people are afraid to ask out loud, but secretly ache to know the answer to. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "More real than this." Her eyes filled with tears, and she pressed a hand to her mouth. I needed to hear that. I watched as something shifted in her. A spark, a flicker of faith rekindled in a soul that had almost lost it. And I knew in that moment that this was just the beginning. I had been sent back not just to tell my story, but to ignite something in others. To awaken those who were longing for proof that God was still moving, still speaking, still calling. The message wasn't just for me. It was for you. Join our community. Be part of something bigger. What we're building here isn't just a channel, it's a community. A place where faith is renewed, where questions are answered, and where hope is restored. And here's the truth. We don't do this for money. We don't make anything from this. We do it because we believe in it, because we know that someone out there needs to hear these messages. If this story has moved you, if you felt even a glimpse of something greater, then I ask you to do something small that means so much to us. Like this video and subscribe to our channel. It's a simple action, but it helps more than you know. It helps this message reach more people. It helps grow this community. And it tells us that we're not alone in this mission. So if you believe in what we're doing here, if you want to be part of this journey, join us. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. Because this is only the beginning. Now let's continue. Life after death. True life after death is not about returning to the same existence as before. Once you've seen what I have seen, once you've been touched by something beyond time and space, nothing is ever the same. The world looked different to me now. It wasn't that it had changed, but I had. Every moment, every conversation, every soul I encountered carried eternal weight. I no longer saw people as just bodies moving through the motions of daily life. I saw them as spirits, as threads woven into a greater story. Some were aware, awake to the battle surrounding them. Others were asleep, blind to the light reaching out to them, waiting for them to see. And that was why I had been sent back. I wasn't meant to hold on to this truth in silence. I was meant to share it. As the weeks passed and I recovered, I found myself drawn to places I wouldn't have gone before. Hospitals, shelters, churches, even street corners. Every time I saw someone struggling, someone lost, grieving, searching, I felt a pull in my soul. One day I met a man outside a diner. His clothes were worn, his hands rough, his eyes hollow with a pain I couldn't begin to measure. He barely looked up when I sat beside him. "You don't have to believe me," I said softly. "But I died. And I saw something." He scoffed. "Yeah. And what did you see?" "Love," I said. "More love than I ever knew was possible." For the first time he looked at me. And in his eyes I saw what I had seen in so many others. The question they were afraid to ask. "Is there hope for someone like me?" "There's hope for all of us," I whispered. I didn't have to say anything more. Because in that moment I wasn't speaking to just him. I was speaking to you, to anyone who has ever wondered if they are seen, if they are loved, if their prayers matter. And I am telling you now they do. He sees you. He has always seen you. And he is calling you. Before you go, this is for you. This might be the most important part of this journey. Because God didn't bring you here by accident. If you've made it to this point, I want to invite you to keep going. To keep seeking, to keep discovering, to keep stepping into the truth that has been waiting for you. There is another message, one that will reveal something powerful in your life. It's right here. Just click on the video that's appearing on your screen. It's no coincidence, it's meant for you. Before you go, I also want to ask one last thing. If you felt something stir inside of you today, if this message has reached you in any way, leave a comment below. Just type Amen. That's it. By doing that, you're saying yes to this moment. yes to what God is doing. And when you do, I believe He will continue to bless you, to reveal Himself to you in ways you never imagined. And if you haven't yet, leave a like on this video. Not for me, but so that more people can find this message. So that more people who need to hear this can see the light. You are not alone. You have never been alone.